You're listening to the TWOBUCKS podcast, the podcast for outdoor entrepreneurs.
Little by little, I was getting the sense of my time isn't my time.
Just kept feeling this pull to the outdoors and wanting to do something in the outdoor space.
Welcome back to another TWOBUCKS podcast episode. I'm your host, Brian Krebs, and I'm super excited today because I've got someone else from maybe the backyard or the hometown, but Matt Waldron from Crappie Chronicles is here tonight. All of you listeners know we've had Bart on the podcast. We've had Pink on the podcast. I've got 3 out of my 4, my Chronicle Slam. I got one more eventually, and I feel like he might be the hardest one to pin down.
But, he's pretty difficult to pin down.
Eventually we'll get Griff on the podcast. But how you doing tonight, Matt?
Oh, pretty good. How about you?
Pretty good. How are you guys liking this exceptionally warm winter we're having?
It's actually been a huge challenge to work around. It's been kind of a pain, not gonna lie. I'm pretty up to date, I think, on Chronicles. But I actually really liked the episode where you guys, I think you were in southwest of the metro trying to find Ottertail County or trying to find some ice. I mean, literally at that point, we're just trying to find ice. And you guys were like stopping on the edge of the road, like one hit goes through and you're like, nope. And go to the next lake, nope. And it's like 60-mile-an-hour winds and you guys go play cornhole and do a pheasant hunt instead. And I'm like, this was actually like, I've done enough trips to know like sometimes like that's just what happens. And instead of fishing, you just hanging out with the guys, driving around, going to a cornhole tournament, and you just have a blast, even though that's not really why you went. But I was like, I like that episode. But it kind of shows like what really happens on some of these trips. Like, you know, we try to push the limits with still being safe. And that weekend was definitely pushing the limits on ice. We did end up getting on ice, but we were in the Lac-Aparle area. So we were staying at Watson's Hunting Camp, and they have an awesome building that they rent out for like hunting trips, hunting groups that come out and do pheasant hunts and stuff. So we were there for, I think, like 3 days, and we finally got on ice the very last day. It was cold enough, but it was brutal conditions to start early ice. I mean, right after like the St. Paul Ice Show, it was, I want to say like that first week of December or just before that, we had a little bit of a cold snap. So it got all of us excited. And then right after the ice show, it was like 40 degrees. And so we knew there was no ice in the metro, and we were like scratching our heads and we're like, well, let's try Lac-Aparle area because they had ice. And so we got to the lake and we drove past it. It would have been Friday morning when we were out scouting. And when we drove past Lac-Aparle, like the whole thing was ice. And we were like, sweet, we're going to go fish. The guy said there was 5 inches in this back little offshoot of it. We'll at least be able to get on ice. And then we drove past after checking a bunch of lakes, and there was no ice on the lake anymore. The wind was ripping so hard, it just ate it all up.
Yikes.
So that's when we played some cornhole and got our ass whooped. It was pretty bad.
I liked how you guys went into it like, we might have a chance. And then you talk to the first guy and he's like, yeah, he's a national pro. And you're like, yeah, we don't have a chance.
It was pretty cool though, seeing it. And everyone there was super nice. Like, we were worried it was going to be a bunch of locals all pissed off that we're out in their area filming with cameras, which it happens to us every once in a while. Like, there's some people that just don't like it when people come there with cameras. So, I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
And, you know, they like to keep their area and whatnot. But everyone there was super awesome, very inviting. And they're like, yeah, we'll take your money. Come on.
Right.
Yeah.
So with this weather, because I think I know the same time frame, I had a show. I don't think it was the St. Paul Ice Show because that one's really big. And the show we were at wasn't that big, but they were selling Razor ice auger units for $200. And I was looking at getting a K-bit or some type of like drill bit auger.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I'm checking it out, and it's like $185 for the 8-inch composite. And he's like, hey, anyway, you can get this. We're doing a sale. Like the owner just doesn't want to carry him anymore, so you can do this. $200 gets the whole thing, battery, power head, charger. And I'm like, well,
wasn't really in the market, but how do you say
Yeah.
no to that deal? So I bought that, and that's
Yeah.
what kind of spurred my ice fishing. And then, like you said, that first cold front, I was out, I was checking daily, and it, 7 on shore, 5, 6 out in some of these little lakes by my house.
Yeah.
And so I remember hitting the ice, and it was like raining, 40 degrees, water on top of the ice, still 5, 6 inches. But the nice thing was, your holes never froze up, because I don't have a house. I was just fishing. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like, holes aren't freezing up. Like, it's super comfortable. I don't need to wear gloves. I can put my hand in the water, And then Christmas, like the week of Christmas, we just saw everything just obliterate. Like 3 inches of rain at the farm here. We got 3 inches of rain.
Yeah.
And everything melted. I mean, there's just ponds behind my brother-in-law's house. Like, they had Christmas, and they were watching the ice just melt away, like minute by minute, until it was gone. We drove by Mille Lacs, open water everywhere.
Yeah.
And it took 2 weeks before we got ice again. And like this last cold front, we really needed it. Because then I started doing the math. Like, I'm an engineer, so I was looking up, like, there's got to be a formula for how much ice gets made, right?
Yeah.
So I Google it, and it turns out it's like your average, your 20, once it freezes over, it'll add an inch a day for every like 24-hour period that it averages 30 degrees below freezing, right?
Yeah.
And so basically, if you have a 0 degree average for 24 hours, you'll put an inch of ice on.
Yeah.
And then I start looking at the weather, and you're like, highs of 28, lows of 22. And you're like, all right, so we added 1/8 of an inch of ice today.
Yep. Pretty much. Yeah, it's crazy. But if you ever need an auger, you just let me know. So at Vexilar, we also build K-drills. So
really?
Yep, that's our company. So
okay.
It's just we weren't going to call it the Vexilar ice drill, so we started a new company to build the K-drills, and so we build them in-house at Vexilar.
Oh, like the K-drill, like what everyone calls like a K-drill bit, or like get a K-drill. And a lot of times now they just refer to it like a bobcat, like anything with a skid steer with a bucket or Velcro, like.
Yeah.
But that's okay. That's good to know. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I'm sure like
them.
that probably came through your department if you're working on the R&D side eventually, like, hey, how do we figure this out? Design it.
Kind of. So we actually started before I was even at Vexilar. I've been at Vexilar since 2015.
Okay.
And that was, we started it, and the project started, I believe, in like 2007. But we had to wait like 5-6 years to put it on market because it was great on a gas power head, but none of the electric drills were there yet. And so then Milwaukee finally came out with their first 18-volt brushless drill. And that right there was a huge game changer for us, because now we actually had a drill that could power the K-drill without blowing up.
Yeah.
And so we, that really spiked our sales. And then I believe in 2016 is when we first offered it to retailers. And we went from building like 2,000 units a year to 10,000 units a year. And now I think we're building like 20,000 to 30,000 units a year.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I would like, so I'm happy with my razor. Like I'm happy that I got an auger and it lets me cut ice.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm working with the service department, and I don't think it's normal, but it does not cut unless I put a lot of weight down on it. It just doesn't.
Blades dull? Sometimes they get burrs on the blades, and that can be just from factory.
I've looked at them, and I'm like, that look good. There's nothing obvious on the blade. Mm-hmm. They're tight, they're snug, they look like they're where they're supposed to be. The only thing I can think of is that auger has like 2 flanges that stick down on the ends.
Mm-hmm.
To like, and I think people have said like they're supposed to help it not like hang up right when you break through.
Yeah, they're called control tabs. And so what it does is, control tabs are so if you do put a lot of weight on it, it doesn't cause the auger to bite more. Yeah, so it's a control rate tab, essentially, of how much ice you can cut no matter what weight you're putting down on it. And
that makes sense.
It does help with breakthrough quite a bit. Otherwise, like, there is some augers that don't have them, like the Strike Master Mora hand auger, which you can put on an electric drill attachment, but the problem is there's no control flanges on the bottom. So when it breaks through, it leaves a chunk of ice sometimes at the bottom. That's why most people run the black laser bits from Strike Master instead of the Moras. It's a
Okay.
great hand auger, but on a drill, it doesn't work very well. So that's
Well,
what those tabs do.
I'm wondering if those tabs might just be like out of spec on mine, and it's holding the blades too high up that they're like it. Like I took a video. It was really hard because you need 2 hands to run it. But it, like if I hold it and just let it sit there, it just around and around it goes. It doesn't do anything. Like I have to like push down on it to actually get it to start. And so I'm working with service. It sounds like they're like, yeah, that's not normal. We'll take care of it. But I have been like, well, it's cool. But this last weekend I used other people's augers, and it was like instantly like, oh yeah, mine's definitely not working right.
Yeah, I know a couple guys over at Razor. They should be able to take care of you pretty easily.
Yeah.
They've got good service.
Yeah, I'm talking to Nick, who I think is
Nick Cox.
Started it maybe. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so it's been tough. It's been a tough year. And that's what I wanted to ask you about, because like you have, obviously you're a member of a team. Like you guys got a pretty strong 4-man squad. And you have you're in your 4th season of I would think one of the most popular ice fishing series, especially in the upper Midwest. Like anything crappie related, anything Minnesota related, like you're the hometown crew, everyone likes that. But you've got like typically you guys are doing like 10 to 12 episodes you're putting out a year, and when you can't fish, 2 months out of the winter, like how does that affect what you guys are doing with Crappie Chronicles? And like I know you guys have added in a lot of bonus content this year. That you're doing like electronics deep dives and lake deep dives. Is that in retaliation of like we can't get on the ice and we have like commitments to make content? And I mean, it's got to put you in a tough spot as the creator.
No, to be honest with you, it's just by happenstance. So I don't know how we've been this lucky, but like last year we had really bad ice in the metro because of all the snow that we got. And it was really hard getting around. And last year, so we always plan out our year the spring before. So like everything this year that we had planned out, we planned it out in like March, April, May, because that's when we have to talk to sponsors, make proposals, work on designing stuff. I mean, a whole lot of different things that always usually happens in the spring, the previous season. So for last year, the spring before last year, we all were like, well, we filmed Metro now for 2 years. Let's go on some fun trips. We've built up a little bit of a budget where we can afford these trips now finally, and let's go do some exploring across the country and really see what else is out there. And so it was just by happenstance that we didn't film Metro, and it was almost impossible to film Metro because of the ice conditions with the snow. Well, this year, we had gotten a lot of requests over the last 3 years of people wanting us to do really in-depth like breakdowns of lakes and gear and tactics and tackle and whatnot, and what we use and do in certain situations. So this spring we were like, well, let's start a new little mini series called Expose the Ice and really get into that, because it's hard for us to do those deep dives in an actual Chronicles video. Because we have so much other content that needs to be addressed in those videos that adding this onto it would make the videos less appealing to some people that are just there to watch us catch fish or just there to see different bites. So we started out the new series that hyper focuses in on that. So we filmed all these episodes, I believe it was in August or September that we filmed them all. It was before hunting season started, because Pink and I like put our foot down, like, you're not doing that during hunting season. Our hunting season already gets cut short because of filming, because you can hunt the whole month of December. And so my hunting season's already a month cut short. Pretty much from Thanksgiving weekend on, I have no time to hunt anymore, because we've got shows, we've got seminars, we've got a whole lot of different things that we have to do. So we did it in August. We filmed actually all the episodes in one day at Thorne Brothers in their upstairs little seminar room. And we got all that taken care of. And then pretty much we had planned to completely fish the Metro the whole winter. And then we were going to do a couple big trips this winter. We were going to go out west. Last year we went east. This year we were going to go west for our big trips, but our hyper focus was going to be on the Metro.
Right.
And when we saw the ice conditions turning out as there might not be ice for a little bit around here, we kind of had hit scramble mode. So we added 2 trips on, and we actually canceled the Western trips because our focus this year was we need to get back to the Metro and chasing giants because we know what's here. Most of our audience loves seeing us in the Metro, and we had a lot of people asking if we're going to be coming back last year because we didn't fish Metro. So
Right.
we kind of hit scramble mode a little bit. We threw in that Lac-Parle trip, which that was just a fun weekend getaway just to try to find ice, and we were able to find some. And then we went up to Ottertail for the next trip because we still didn't have ice around here. And Ottertail was definitely not planned at all for this year. And so that was pretty much a week planning, like a week ahead of time planning to get that trip done. So we had to move a lot of stuff down logistically. For me, I have a little bit of wiggle room with work because it's also promoting our product. So there's a little bit of a leeway there. But with Pink, he works for the city of Chanhassen, so he doesn't have any wiggle room at all. So he had to figure it out, and he wasn't even up there the whole time we were there because he couldn't get up to work. So we made that work, and then we got back to the Metro, and there was still no ice. But luckily, we had gotten enough episodes to bankroll the next week or two and throw in a couple expose the ice videos so we could let the Metro ice build.
Right.
And thank God for that cold front. Otherwise, we'd be screwed. I mean, a couple of the lakes we were on this last weekend, there was some people driving small vehicles out. There was 12, 14 inches of ice on some of the little lakes. I mean,
really?
I was out on Minnetonka on Friday, and I was on the main lake on the east side chasing some walleyes, and we didn't catch anything. The weather was terrible. But there was like 13 inches of ice. And the week prior, I drove around the lake just to see what the ice was looking like, and there was no ice.
Yeah.
So when there's no snow, ice can build really quick if the temps are cold enough. And so we had single-digit highs, and that really kicked things off quite a bit.
Yeah. We were at Mille Lacs on Saturday, and like it was kind of crazy. Some of the places we were getting like 20 inches of ice.
Yeah.
And then other places were only hitting like 12. And the guy said, like, yeah, anywhere the ice broke, you'll hit gray ice, and that's going to be like 20 inches of like crappy ice.
Yeah.
And anywhere it's clear black, it'll be like 12. And he picked 4,500 pounds. He's like, I'll let any vehicles 4,500 or less on, or like Rangers with dollies on wheelhouses, which I was like, well, that's an interesting. I was like, he must be trying to like not allow full size trucks, because I happen to know my pickup's like 4,800 pounds.
Yeah.
Because I used to buy like fertilizer from my buddy for our food plots by the truckload.
Yeah.
And so we'd weigh it on a cat scale. And then this guy with the Honda like Ridgeline is like, yeah, my truck's 4,500 pounds. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's not. I have a like heavy half Ford with a toolbox and a bunch of stuff, and like, you're whatever. Yeah. Anyway, so there was a couple people driving around, but man, it's scary. I mean, you hear stories like people falling through this last weekend in the lacs checking ice, and
it's freaky. That's why, like, I'm really happy we've got machines, because it makes life way easier where I don't have to dump my pickup. I'd rather not.
Oh gosh, yeah. And so when you said you plan out the entire season and do like the roll ahead of time, are you planning down to like we're going to hit these lakes this year, or you're just saying like we're going to do like a 12 episode season, maybe we'll do a couple of like 3 destination trips and maybe 4 local lakes, and maybe we'll do like 3 river episodes, and that's like you're not like saying we're going to fish, Lake X, and then we're going to fish Lake Y, and then we're going to fish Lake Z?
To a certain point we do.
Okay.
Because like there's certain lakes that set up really good early ice. There's certain lakes that set up really good midwinter, where the success ratio is definitely a lot higher, where there's some lakes where they school really well middle of winter, and it's easier to pick out big fish. The backwaters are usually best early before the oxygen depletion hits them and they get really hard to catch or they die. So there's a lot of science that goes down into what we actually do and when we do it. And we also, a lot of these lakes we have fished. I mean, there's not many metro lakes that have big crappies in them that we haven't fished. So we have an idea of when those lakes are good and when the best time of year to catch those fish are. And because Griff and I did this way before the Chronicles. I mean, we've been doing this since we were kids, chasing giant crappies around here. So we have a good backlog of just information that we've obtained over years and years of being able. It's like deer hunting. You can pattern fish almost the same way. Like a lake we were just on this last weekend, 2 years ago to the day, we filmed an episode absolutely whacking them, and we whacked them. So there's a lot of timing things that go into it. And so we do in the off season, like we have an idea of like, we have like lists of lakes that we know are good early ice that we'll go hit. And then same with like backwaters and just other lakes in general. We do have kind of like a itinerary planned out of when we're hitting what when, but a big thing that comes down to like, it usually is like a week before decision now that we are in the metro, and it's this time of year of where we're going when. And the reason why it's a week before is because certain lakes set up really good for certain weather days. So we look heavily at the barometer and the clouds. So if it's cloudy or sunny, that will fire off a bite, even if the barometer is perfect. So we'll have, like, we have a couple lakes, like the one we were on this last weekend, where the barometer was falling, and that's really, really good on this lake, except there has to be sun. And oftentimes with a falling barometer, there's not much. And so we had like 3 to 4 hours where it was sunny, and we caught some freaks. It was awesome. And then the clouds came out, they got significantly tougher to catch. So there's a lot of details that really come down to our final decisions of, yep, we're hitting this lake this specific day. And that usually happens the week before, because weather models, when you're within 6 days, get very accurate. When you're outside of 6 days, they're usually within a 72-hour period. So I do a lot of storm chasing all summer long. I drive all over the Midwest chasing tornadoes and severe thunderstorms. And I should send you a picture of my truck setup. It's pretty insane. It's almost like a bass boat, where I have dual 12-inch iPads next to each other.
All the electronics.
Yeah. So I have dual 12-inch iPads with radars next to each other. And so we go Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota, Wisconsin, all over the place chasing. And so the weather and planning thing, that's usually my deal with the Chronicles, is research. And one, I love catching them too, but research, finding the lakes, figuring out the bites, and the weather conditions that'll set up perfect for certain lakes. Because we've got some lakes where theoretically high pressure is really bad, and they absolutely chew when it's high pressure or topped out pressure and super sunny out. And so there's a lot of that comes down to just us being on the lakes and recording all that data and knowing when they're biting and why they're biting. So for specific lakes, that's usually like the week of.
Yeah.
We have an idea of like the area that we want to be, but for specifics, that's usually like that week we plan that out. Our trips, we just wing it. Like, that's something that we have to fish every weather condition and figure out how to make them bite. So that's the nice thing about the trips, is we show how to learn on the fly. And then the metro, we show how to accrue data and really get the wheels turning in your head to figure out the specifics of when to go here and when it's the best.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. And I have to make a shout out to my brother-in-law, Brett. He's going to listen to this. He's like our number one fan. He used to be a storm chaser like yourself. He has all of the, like my weather app tells me if it's going to rain. And it usually is like, hey, it's raining. And I look outside and it's like, oh yeah, it's right. Yeah. He's got the stuff where he's looking at like updrafts and downdrafts and pressure and like all that stuff. And he used to chase tornadoes down across the Midwest, and he used to film blizzards and sell them to sell his clips to like news stations, and
Yep.
it just loves it. And he
I
loves the
guarantee you
Chronicles
he sells
too.
them
So
to Severe Storms Media is probably who he sells them to.
maybe he doesn't do it as much anymore now. He's a firefighter and he's got a family, and
Yeah.
so I think he pretty much hung up the storm chasing, but he still loves like meteorology and
Oh, yeah.
tracking stuff. Like there's been times where he'll text me and be like, "Hey, there's a huge storm coming and it's going to be ugly. Like they're under predicting this one." And so I'll run outside quick and like move my truck, and then all of a sudden it just all hell breaks loose. I'm
Yeah.
like, thanks, you saved me a deductible.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he
that's
loves
what
the
I love
Chronicles
doing.
too, so he's going to
That's
really get a
awesome.
kick out of learning that you were also a storm chaser.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love it. I have my truck set up with it, all the GoPros, everything, and it's awesome. I mean, we chased all over the place. Like we were in Iowa last year. Actually, was a really bad severe weather year in the Midwest. We had, well, good for normal people, bad for storm chasers because we didn't really have much to chase besides a few hailstorms. But I mean, 2 years ago we got onto a monster tornado in Iowa, and it was so much fun. It's an adrenaline rush. I mean, and it can be pretty stinking dangerous. And that adrenaline rush, I just crave it. I love it.
I'm surprised you're not into like the power sports game, but I was gonna say it must be dangerous. And I was gonna ask, like, I know Pink does. He's got the book. He's got the cookbook. He's a big Western hunter.
Yep.
When we had him on the podcast, he talked about doing like reviving his wild meat. Like, I don't know what he was had in mind. Yeah, meat season and doing more outside of fish, basically.
Yeah.
And then is Griff a full-time fishing guide, like year round?
Yeah, he was a full-time fishing guide. But now he actually is a tiler now. So he works for a company called Tile Fusion, who one of our buddies, Dave Karp, owns. And they do like high-end tiling work. And so Griff does that now as his main job, and then he guides on the side. Like I'm pretty sure he has a guide trip tomorrow. So yeah, he does. He's not full-time with it anymore, but he does a lot of guide trips in a year.
Right. So I was going to ask you, like, what's your off-season gig? Because it's also, like, it's super cool what you guys have built, but it's really hard to do a 12-month ice fishing show.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you keep the train rolling, and how do you keep the momentum up? Or do you, I mean, you mentioned we got together in August and we did a little bit of stuff, and it's gone over really well from what I've seen. So I'm guessing that'll be something you try to keep building on. And you talked about like coming together and making plans and working with sponsors basically after ice season, April, May. But there's still like that stretch in the middle where I feel like it would be so easy for like one of you to have a kid in July and the other one gets a new job, and all of a sudden all the wheels fall off the bus, right? Because there's 5 months where you're not really doing anything for it.
Yeah.
And that's like a consistency and momentum are like the two biggest things for any entrepreneur effort is like keep working at it every day. And it's amazing what you'll do in a year. And then all of a sudden you get to ice fishing content and you can work as hard as you want for 6 months, but then you're kind of toast for 6 months.
Yeah. So that like off period, well, one, I just got into bow hunting, would have been 3 years ago now, and I'm absolutely obsessed with it. Like if I could choose hunting or ice fishing, I would choose bow hunting any day. Like I absolutely love it. It's been a huge addiction for me. So like in the summer I do like a few tack shoots and stuff like that and 3D shoots, and I really have just fallen in love with archery. It's like one of my favorite things now. But on the Chronicle side of things, like our off season, that's our planning. That's when we're working with companies, figuring out how to make show better. We're also planning all the logistics for the next season, and that takes up a lot of time. Like where we're going to go, I'm emailing the DNR, figuring out what lakes have winter killed, what lakes have surveyed well. Like there's a ton of like off the water stuff that we do to plan for the next season. So but it is very slow for the Chronicles in the summer. I mean, there's no ice. And so like, I used to do a lot of bass tournaments. I don't do hardly any tournaments anymore now, but, cause with me working cause like for me, I haven't been home pretty much the last 7 weekends, maybe even more now. and I'm looking at my schedule, and I'm going to be gone the next 7 weekends too. So my winters, especially with working at Vexlar, are just incredibly busy because I'm at work every single day, and then I'm filming either after work or on the weekends. And then our film trips on top of that, then I'm working away from work for Vexlar stuff on the road, and it's incredibly busy. So like, I love the off season. It's my favorite time. It's just like hunters, you know, like look at like Lee and Tiffany or the Seek One guys or any of those guys. I mean, they can't hunt, you know, from, I mean, you got turkey season and stuff, but turkeys only get you so excited. They piss you off too much. So they, there's a lot of off time and downtime. So we just find a way to keep ourselves busy with like the lake research and planning out the following year, working with companies on either product design or product refinements, how to make things better. And then like planning out logistically the next year of where we're going, what we're doing, and then what shows and seminars we're going to be doing. And so there's a lot that goes into it in the off season, but my off seasons are mostly spent either fun fishing, hanging out with friends that I don't get to hang out with all winter, or storm chasing.
Storm chasing and shooting bows. Yeah. We just joined my wife just got into bow hunting. So she grew up bow hunting a little bit with her dad, and then she went to pharmacy and med school and pretty much put it aside for 8 years. And then this year we bought the farm. It's all hunting land. It's 40 acres of hunting land. We call it a farm because in my family, all of our farms are hunting land. Yeah. That's what we call them. Yeah. And so she bought a brand new Hoyt, been shooting it like crazy. She said she's going to shoot the first buck on our farm with her bow. That's sure awesome. Enough, she did. She shot a doe before it in the early antler list, but then she shot the first buck with her bow, and I was sitting in the tree with her. So she shot 2 deer off our new farm. I'm at 0. So she's taken a huge lead. And now we're doing 3D archery league at Full Draw just north of our house here. I don't know what part of the cities you're from. North side, south side?
I'm from Bloomington is where I grew up. I just actually bought a house with my wife, would have been 3 years ago now, in New Prague. So now I'm south of the cities. But you know my cousin Kevin then. He works at Full Draw.
That's your cousin?
Yeah.
I got into a heated debate on fixed blades versus mechanicals for elk with Kevin last week.
He's a good dude.
It wasn't actually that heated. He was just like, this is, I'm all accuracy. And I was like, I get it. I don't know. I went a little heavier, try to get penetration. But I love Kevin. He's there every Tuesday when we shoot league. Yeah. So, I just learned his name last week.
Yeah. So that it would be my dad's side of the family. So they all live north of the metro. So his brother Dan also is one that got me into hunting. But my Hoyt that I shoot was my first bow I bought from Kevin.
Nice. Yeah. Cool. Small world. It really is a small world. But that was one thing, because I've felt that struggle with everything that I'm doing. The 2 podcasts, social media. I have a beard oil company. And then I have these aspirations to start YouTube. Yeah. And it's the momentum and consistency thing. Like when it's high, it's unbeatable. When it's low, it's like so hard to get back into it and so hard to get the wheels turning again. And so the other thing I wanted to kind of ask you guys about was kind of more on like the production and storytelling side of it. Cause you guys have, if anyone hasn't listened or watched Crappie Chronicles, it is a very high class production. It is all the bells and whistles, full on editing. It's not a hack job where you can tell someone went out with a GoPro and hit stop, hit start, and just put them in sequentially and then exported it. Yeah. Right. Like you guys have animations, you have After Effects, you have, you score everything. And so how do you guys maintain the storyline? Because there's 4 people, there's a lot of moving parts. You usually have somebody coming and taking along with a camera aside from fishing. Yeah. They usually have no culinary experience in their life whatsoever, it sounds like. Yeah. And then you guys also have a way of storytelling where all 4 of you will tell the same story, and not like the repetitive, but like you all have your portion of the story.
Yeah.
And then, but how do you keep all that? Like, okay, Bart's going to say this, and then Griff's going to say that right afterwards, like finish the sentence or finish the thought, and then Pink's going to come in. How do you guys keep all of that straight? I mean, are you literally bringing storyboards and scripts to the, event, or do you just kind of wing it?
Yeah. So pretty much, are you talking about like the interviews that we do in each video?
Right, yeah. Once the fish start flying out of the holes, everything it just goes naturally. It starts flowing. But yeah, when you're doing the interviews at like the cabin, the one that really caught my eye was the Red Lake episode that fired off this season.
Yeah.
And how you guys were all like talking about the boom and what happened and how we can change that this year. But it wasn't like Griff did the intro.
Yeah.
Right? You each took a section of the intro. And for me, thinking about like planning this all out, like that's a lot of moving parts, and it's going to be, I assume, a few days or maybe even a week before you're back. Or in that case, it was maybe a long time. Is that you filmed that last year, like before you get back into the editing room and be like, okay, what did we do? And like, you know what I mean, to get the whole thing to really button up nice.
Yeah. So pretty much what normally we do is we find a day where we're all going to be together, and then we either stay at the lake late or we go back to one of our houses afterwards, and we have a list of questions. So like pretty much Bart makes a list of questions that he knows are going to spark a good response, and he knows out of the four of us he'll at least get a good response to clip in and use. And so he'll ask us all the same set of questions, and all of us are going to have different responses to every single one. And then he picks and chooses good responses from each of us to throw in and mash up into one little interview clump.
Gotcha.
And so that's usually how we do that. And that's either just after we filmed episodes or just before we film episodes that we'll do those interviews and all kind of get together.
Okay, so it's fresh of mind, but then he's basically saying, if I take this 4 times, like Matt might really hit it out of the park on this question, and then he might be like, I don't know, on the next question. And so then he'll take Griff's answer instead. And together it just works out that he has a nice, like, cohesive interview versus like choppy and everyone's kind of thinking their own thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because he doesn't want to ask us all different questions, and so he might word the question a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, it's like still the same question. And so he asks us all those questions, and then each one of us give our answers. And so normally it takes like I would say like an hour or so, maybe a little bit longer, to get all of us done for the questions. And then that's what's great about Bart is his job. He's the main editor and the main brainchild behind a lot of it, but he also is a really good storyteller. Like that's his forte, is telling the story. So he comes up with the questions and everything, because in his head he already has an idea of what he wants the video to look like, and then he puts it all together. So that's mostly his deal, is he's the storyteller. I'm the researcher and one of the fish catchers. Griff is just the fishiest guy out of all of us. And then Pink also is a really good fisherman, but he's also a really good cook. So each one of us has our own roles that we really hyper focus on, and it just makes it work very well together. It's just very cohesive.
I noticed that like you each have roles. You know, Pink, everyone knows Pink's the food guru.
Yeah.
I feel like I've always thought Bart's role was like lead cat herder.
Yeah.
That's
a good way of doing it.
Like he's just in charge of like making sure everyone, and sometimes he really drops the ball. Like he'll rent you guys a car 3 hours away from where your plane lands.
Well, yeah, and a lot of things that people don't know about that is like we didn't plan on the car thing at all. Like we had an idea in our head, but that was a little acting on our parts, so we kind of crushed it. But
I mean, you guys landed in Maine or New York or wherever you landed, and expected like there was going to be a car there for you to drive to the Airbnb.
We knew that there wasn't.
Once you got into it.
Yeah, well, yeah, that was a little bit of acting on our part, but we have everything very logistically planned out when we do the shows. So we knew that we were going to be taking a train. We just didn't know how long we were going to be on that damn train for.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see. I
So,
loved
like,
the lobster, by the way.
oh, I know. Larry. I think it was Larry.
I
Larry
thought
the
it was
lobster.
Larry, and then or
No,
Buddy,
no. It was Bobby.
Bobby.
It was Bobby because of the Bobby Orr statue right outside right outside the grocery store.
And then I just rewatched that, and the drunk guy I didn't catch the drunk guy on the train that was giving you like a lot of issues.
Oh, it was bad. It was
Yeah.
bad. I think,
And
we
I'm sure
also
you
had
tamped it down for the episode.
Oh yeah, it was really bad. That guy was absolutely hammered, and I mean, he reeked of booze. He was smoking on the train, like, and he had his knees up against my seat, and so anytime like I breathed, the seat would move, and he would lose it. So it was very interesting to say the least.
Yeah, that's a story. So
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I really liked how each one of you guys has a role. I think a lot of people catch on pretty fast that Griff is the crappie whisperer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Griff's also, he's been doing it longer than any of us guys have been alive, really. I mean, Griff's quite a bit older than us. And so I know I've learned more than I could even imagine just from fishing with Griff, but he's got, 15 years of this on top of us. So he's really, I mean, so.
And it's impressive to think that those 15 years, like, there probably wasn't even like real Vexlars.
No, yeah, you had Vex. You had Vexes. There wasn't
back when he started.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was Vex, but that's simple. But yeah, like no forward facing, no like
no cameras, no forward
Mega Live,
facing,
Aquaview, yeah,
hardly any lake maps. Like
right,
the
like
lake
real
maps
old
were
school
junk. Like there wasn't much at all really, and there was hardly any GPSs, and so he really got to learn the nuances from all of it, and so that's why he is so good. I hope when I'm Griff's age, I'm nearly as good as he is at catching them, because he's incredible. Watching him do his thing is pretty impressive, and I'm just lucky I get to do it almost every day.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from watching the show, which is obviously what you guys are trying to do, is help share that. But it's like I've never really fished new lakes, like especially ice fishing. It was growing up in lake country. We grew up in Alexandria.
Oh yeah.
And so we lived on a lake, so I knew how to fish that lake because I lived on it. And I was there every day.
Yeah.
And we didn't fish a lot of the other lakes unless we got a hot tip. Like my dad had some businesses. He'd interact with a lot of people each day. And so sometimes he'd get a hot tip like, oh, hey, there's huge slabs on Reno and 22 feet of water off this point. And so we'd go move our house over there for 2 weeks and we'd catch a few. And then the snow would come and dad would move the house off. And like that was ice fishing to me.
Yeah.
Now when we moved here, it's like I gotta figure out these lakes, and then I look and I'm like, yeah, it would be super easy with forward-facing sonar, but that's expensive and out of my budget right now anyway. And also I'm like, am I actually gonna learn how to fish, or am I just gonna like spot and stock, like when I'm hunting the West?
Yeah.
I don't really know why that fish is there. I just know he's there, and it's bypassing the step to really learning why is he there. Like you just skip that and be like, oh hey, there's a fish, let's go over there. And so I'm like, I don't know if it would be helpful. Maybe I should just struggle it out for a few years first.
Yeah. No, and the struggle part is really beneficial because you get to learn different pieces of structure that fish like at different times of the years. You get to learn fish movements.
Right.
And pretty much so we apply all that in conjunction with the forward facing. So we'll use all of our knowledge about just how fish set up in certain lakes, and then really apply that of spots and areas that we're going to check out first. And we'll create our milk run on a lake, and then we use the forward facing of showing us what's actually on that spot once we get to it. So it's really good to start out without it, because you get to learn fish movements and how they behave and where they locate first, which is super important, versus just showing up to like, oh yeah, I got forward facing, and then wandering around aimlessly, not in high percentage areas where you might catch bigger fish than what you normally would. So we use it in conjunction with it, but it is very challenging though, because there's plenty of times where you can see them on the forward facing, but drilling on top of them can't do. They run away like crazy, or they're just moving too fast that you can't even get in front of them. Like we've had some lakes where we've seen the giants, but we have not been able to get in front of them because they are just moving too fast. So,
Oh, yeah.
and that can come down to like weather patterns. It can come down to simply just the time of year. Like there's a lot of little nuances to it. So we have to stay on top of that when we pick and choose where we go.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's, it's funny because I'm talking about like really fancy electronics.
Mm-hmm.
The electronics that I have, and you're going to laugh at this. I was probably 14, 15 years old. We're in the back of my dad's truck coming home from church. The whole family, me, mom, and dad, coming back from church. And as you can imagine, 14-year-old me was like just not in a good mood. Like, we got to go to church every Sunday. It's a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
We're heading home. And I'm just sitting. I remember I'm sitting in the back seat. My head is up against the glass, and I'm just staring out aimlessly, watching the town go by. And I'm like, holy shit, that was a Vexlar. Dad, turn around. Go take that Dad down that road. There's a Vexlar. And it's like in a city street, He's like, no, it wasn't. I'm like, yes, it was. I swear to God, there was a Vexlar on the side of the road. And he turns around. Sure enough, there's a FL8 Vexlar laying upside down on the road. The carrier was a little busted up, so we hot glued and duct taped or electrical taped 2 popsicle sticks to it.
Nice.
And I don't even know what version of the FL8 it was, but it still worked. Like I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And so that was, I'm 29. So that was 15 years ago. I found this on the side of the road and it was in tough shape then. That's what I use. That's what I still have. And every now and then the deucer goes out, like it'll cut off and it won't show anything. So I got to like jimmy the deucer a little bit and then it turns back on and starts gaining again. And so I'm running around with that. And that's what I'm fishing with. That's all I have. My brother-in-law's got all the fancy stuff. And so when he comes in, it's like a taste of heaven. We're watching, it's like, I always joke that we're watching fish on TV.
Yeah.
Watching his live scope.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
absolutely.
I'm rocking like the OG FL8.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We still service them. We still work on them. We have all the parts available for them. And I mean, I was working on 2 of them today.
I was expecting I might need a new transducer soon. It's starting to cut out faster and faster. It's pretty consistent if I don't move. Like once I'm in and I think going in and out of the ice, setting it down on the ice, maybe ice builds up on the deucer. I don't know, but every now and then it just cuts out.
You're probably due for a new one. They're usually like a 7 to 10 year life expectancy on the transducers just from use and abuse. So, I mean, if you don't use it, it'll last way longer than that, but you probably need a new one.
Well, I've had it 15 years. I know I haven't replaced the deucer since then. And the guy before, if he let it fall off the back of his truck, he probably wasn't taking the best care of it either.
Probably not. Yeah.
So I probably do need a new one, but yeah, that's the tech I'm using. And so it's just really cool to see, what you guys are doing and learn from it, from the fishing side, but also the business side, like the storytelling, the ability to do this. And it's exploded. I mean, I don't know if it's exploded. It just instantly took off. And then you guys have like maintained high quality momentum ever since. Yeah. And so it's really interesting to see that. And I've always like thought about like, does the 4-man team, is that the recipe that really makes it stand out? Like, could you do something like this with whatever demographic, instead of Crappie Chronicles, maybe it's like the Deer Diaries. Yeah. Like your archery thing. Like, could you do it by yourself though? That's the question. Because I think a lot of people out there have this inspiration and this motivation to do it, but they're like, man, I don't have 3 buddies that share like my level of passion for this that I could do a 4-man team with. Like, how do I do this by myself? And so that's kind of what I've been thinking about.
Yeah, it really comes down to what your goals are. So like for us, the 4-man team really works out very well. It's very cohesive with putting on the show and breaking down lakes, dissecting lakes, and we all bring something a little bit different to it. I think it really comes down to A, the story that you're trying to tell, and B, what you're just simply trying to do. Like, there's a lot of guys that are one-man wrecking machines like Tom Boley and Sobe that do their own thing with themselves. They film with buddies every once in a while, but they're pretty much their own team. And it works very well for them and what they do. For us and what we do, it makes it way easier having multiple guys there. And it makes the story better because there's some bites that we have been on where it's just 2 of us filming and we're sitting here like, I mean, even this last weekend, we had splitting up a little bit, and Pink and Griff went to one lake, and Bart and I went to another. And Bart and I were smashing them, and we're like calling them, trying to get them to come back over to where we were, because it was hard to stay on top of them and to film a good show when it's just two guys.
Right.
And it makes it easier because we can film a good show when it's two guys, but at least the two other guys are still fishing, able to catch fish. And that's why we have hired two camera guys now, because when it was just Bart doing it, he can only be in so many places at once.
Right.
Where if we have Bart and two camera guys with, or even at least one camera guy with, it makes things significantly easier. So it really comes down to like what you're simply just trying to do. Cause like there's some things where having one guy doing everything works really well for his story, but for our story, it has simply just become our story. So it works very good with the four of us because we've kind of built up that storyline to it.
Right. And it works out really well. And so I think it's just magical. The energy, like when four people are together and you're hitting them, there's a lot more energy than if there's one person. And especially if it's like not a good day of fishing, you're just staring at this one dude the whole time. I mean, like Jay Siemens is probably a very prominent fishing content creator that typically fishes alone. Right.
Yeah.
And so he's found a way. So there's a niche there, but it's definitely, it's an interesting dynamic that you've built. And I think it's kind of part of the brand, like part of the energy of Crappie Chronicles is there's, you know, four people and there's kind of these unique lanes that you guys have. That I think,
well, the
really
other
special.
thing is like, there's not many groups of guys that do it. So I think that could be a big reason why it's done well is we're like the only group that is doing what we're doing. You have like Mitchell, Sobey, Tom Bully, Clayton Schick, those guys, but they're all individuals doing their own thing. So logistically, it does make it significantly harder scheduling everything, but we have just gotten to a point now where we just block out things and we know that we're going to be filming. We're not sure where, but these are the days that we're filming and we all just block it out in our calendars. We say vacation, we do all that sorts of stuff. And so the group dynamic does make things a little bit more difficult because now you have significantly more moving entities and getting everything to align doesn't work out nearly as well as it does being an individual filming, but it brings a new aspect that no one else is really doing, I think. So, I mean, there's like some Bassmaster and MLF guys that do the group thing where they all stay together and they have the GoPros and it goes on one person's channel or multiple channels, but guys use each other's clips and stuff. And so there is that aspect to it, but we're pretty much the only ones that are doing the group thing ice fishing. I don't know of many others that are.
Right. It's usually not. And that's what I think makes it kind of unique as well. One thing that I wanted to ask you, and I've been trying to figure out the right way to word it. But I get asked a lot about like the details and the numbers. And I hate asking people that. It's like, you know, no one likes to ask that. So if you could like find a way to like kind of do some mental math and do like a rate or a ratio and not be like, hey, we have this many views, so we get this when we talk to a sponsor. But like when someone has a channel and they've managed to do it, they've managed to pull it off, they've managed to build it, they're interesting, they can tell a story, they've got that figured out. And now they want to start working with the brands they love. Like you guys obviously work with, I think they're almost all Minnesota brands. The brewery's in Wisconsin though, right?
Yep, and Dakota Lithium is from North Dakota.
Yeah, but local, Midwest, local. They're known to be local companies. You probably have been using them way longer than Chronicles has been alive.
Yeah.
And so it's like, we know we want to work with these companies, but how do we approach it? Like, you know, what should we expect in a negotiation or an agreement partnership? And because I've gone through this in a couple different ways. I've done product swaps. I've done affiliates, and I've done like a retainer. Like I've done all three of them. And so like what works well for you? And like if you could say like when a video hits like forever like 100,000, we get this many views, like what does that mean when you go to that sponsor negotiation or that meeting with a potential partner?
Yeah. So Bart handles, I would say, most of the negotiations because technically it's Bart's business. So
Okay.
Bartusic Media Management is the producer of the show. So that's Bart's company. He's
Right.
also a freelance videographer and everything. So everything is just gone and channeled through his. So he does a lot of the negotiations on contract work and that stuff. But all of us, besides Pink, had built up a pretty good relationship with all these companies just from we had filmed Team GOHUNT Outdoors, which was way before the Chronicles with a bunch of buddies. But it was Bart and I, and Griff was in some of the videos, but Brent Lopez started the group. And so we had started doing some film work with that. That's actually what started Sobe in filming. Sobe was the camera guy for it. And then he went to college and got hired by Alex Perrick. So we were all pretty in the ice fishing industry already, and we were all really good friends. And so we kind of all looked at each other, and Bart had just lost his job. I believe it was right before COVID hit, and he was pretty much not sure what he was going to do. And he decided that he was going to start his own media company. And that's what really launched the Chronicles the Chronicles really launched his media company. And he had always been really good at editing and videography. So he, that pretty much started it. But with all of us, like me, Griff, and Bart, we had all built relationships. I mean, me working at Vexlar, but with Clam and all these other companies that work together. So we already had good working relationships with them, whether it was being on pro staff or whatever it might be. And so when we first came through with it, our budget was very small. The dollar amounts and the sponsorship stuff was pennies on the dollar compared to what it is now. And so when we had first launched it, it went really, really well. And we realized that we might be able to really move the needle for some of these companies that we're working with, and maybe they'll see benefits from it. And the first year was small, and we only filmed like 9 episodes, and we did it in like 5 weekends, and it just happened to work out really well.
Well, you also caught a few giants that first season.
Yeah, we did catch a couple big ones, and so it was really cool. And then second season 2 was really the deal breaker for us. That's where, because we were looking at the end of season 2 and we're like, I'm not sure if we're going to keep doing this or anything. And then we met with a bunch of the sponsors, and we kind of threw them a high amount, and some of them bid on it. And we were like, well, maybe we can actually do this. And there's something here. And we started really realizing that we were helping these companies sell product. And now it's blown up into, we're at season 4 now, and we're helping companies design stuff. We're really helping them sell product that they might not have sold before. And so it really has grown into a really good working relationship with all these companies that not only do we believe in, but that we really want to help grow. And so if we help them grow, they help us grow. And so it really was a very good working relationship that really, with all these companies, that really kicked us off to where we're at right now. So a lot of all this is just by happenstance, where we just happen to be already with some of these companies, and they were like, yeah, it's a cool idea. Let's see where it goes and see how it grows. And it's just continued to, it's going to end at some point. I know it will, but we're just riding the wave right now. And so we're trying to keep that wave going. And the wave always comes to an end for everyone. And I know it'll happen eventually, but we're just trying to keep it going as long as possible.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to end. Like you said, you were doing Team GOHUNT Outdoors, and back when you were doing that, you're probably like, man, this is amazing. This will never end. This is what I'm going to do for life.
There'll always be something else, for sure.
Somebody might move to a different state, get a different job. Things will change. But it sounds like just consistently working towards the industry, being in the industry, being in the right place, the right time, meeting people. That's helped. And then, like, I would assume like the Chronicle series rods, for example, you have
Yeah.
4 different series rods,
Yeah.
4 different applications. Like I would imagine that's kind of like a cut of sales. Like when the rods get sold, like that's they'll build them, they'll market them, you get a cut, like that's the relationship there. Is most of the sponsorships like kind of structured that way where it's like a commission based agreement, or do you have some that are just flat out retainers?
That would be that would pretty much be the only one that is like that. The rest of it is paid contracts for the show.
And so you're saying we can do like season 3 did X amount of views. So when you start talking about season 4, you kind of like use that as the starting spot.
Yeah.
We did this many episodes. We did, I don't know, let's throw out a number. Maybe a channel does like 1 million views a season, which isn't out of the ballpark for a lot of channels that are established.
Yeah.
And so if you did 1 million views a season, like, are you going to them and like what is a CPM, or like what are some of if you have the numbers? If Bart handles it, that's fine too.
Bart handles most of the hard numbers, but we look at like 3 big things. One, followers on not only YouTube, but I have that TikTok, and then I've got we all have our own Instagrams and everything.
Right.
In our Facebook pages, and we do that strategically because if we post on, like if we had a group Crappie Chronicles page, we can't reach nearly as many people as if we were all posting on our own pages, because we all have different people that follow us for different reasons. So we keep it separated like that. So we have all of our social medias. We also structure it to where we have like when we're pitching stuff to companies, it'll be like we look at view duration, followers, and what's the other one that we look at? Just straight up views. So the view duration is probably the most important one, I would say, that not a lot of people look at.
It's your engagement. Like
it's your engagement.
Yeah.
How long are people actually watching and retaining for? That's a big one that a lot of people overlook, because if you have a video that has 100,000 views, it might technically not do as well sales wise for companies as a video with 20,000 views, but it has double the view duration.
Right. And
so,
like you guys, I think, drive a super high engagement with the brand.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very local, it's very relevant. It's something that like for example, if you guys had a show that was all about how to catch 6-pound crappies in private ponds in Alabama, like no one's like, oh, okay, it's cool, I saw a 6-pound crappie on TV, but I can't do that. There's nothing I could do today. Like I could buy all the Tikka flashes and Pinhead Pros I want. I'm never going to do that because I don't have the private pond to start with.
Yeah.
But when you're saying that, like, this is 60 miles within the metro, like one episode I saw like there's apartment buildings behind you. And like, it's like anyone can do this. Everyone's got the tools. Like you don't need a $50,000 bass boat. You can start with a hand auger and you could catch some fish. And so you have like probably a higher engagement than a lot of channels really do when you really look at it. Like you have more influence on purchasing power, and it's like, it's close by. The brands are close by. Like when you do something at Thorn, people can drive there today. And shop there, like, or, you know what I mean, like, or see you at Thorn and doing seminars. So I think that definitely helps too. Where like, it'd be better to have 10,000 eager followers than 1 million like people that really don't even know your last name. They just know you by like Bart or Pink or Waldron. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And so we really like to be very accessible to everyone. So like we try to be as engaging as we possibly can. Like if we have people commenting or people asking us questions, shooting us messages, we try to be as engaging as possible. And so they really like, a lot of sponsors really like that. And we don't use stuff that we don't believe in, which is another big thing, but we really hold true to that 60 miles because, and a lot of people will try to say, oh, you guys aren't within 60 miles. No, we're with, like, we have a couple lakes we fish that are like 59.8, but like we really hold completely true to it because
when you say we're within, when we're like, when you go to Ottertail or you're at Red or when you are up in the Gold Triangle,
say we're
like
on a trip.
Yeah, we're on a
Yeah.
trip. But when you're like,
Yeah.
we're back in the metro, like you're saying, like you could wake up at 8 a.m. and be fishing at 9 a.m. no matter like where you live in the metro.
Yeah.
Like if you lived
Yep.
in Minneapolis, you could be where we are in an hour.
Yeah. Hour to hour and a half, depending on where you're going. But it's
And traffic.
but so our rule is as the crow flies. So
yeah.
Because
Well, how else would you do? Like,
Yeah.
let's be a little bit realistic here, haters.
Yeah.
Like, how else would you
Yeah.
do it?
Yeah. So we do it as the crows flies, 60 miles from. Bart has a pin that he dropped 4 years ago in Minneapolis, and that's the distance marker that we do to measure out the circle. And it's when we have to do it to a T because we can't lie. And the reason for that is if we're on a lake that is 65 miles from the pin and someone sees us there, all our credibility is out the window.
Right.
If we're on a private pond and someone sees us on a private pond and posts a picture of us fishing a private pond, all our credibility is just straight out the window, and our storyline that we've built up the last 4 years is gone and demolished. So we hold completely true to absolutely everything that we do. Otherwise, the one time we get caught, we're screwed. So we hold it to a T, and it does make it super challenging. But I think that's the credibility thing is what really helps us keep the sponsors as well. So like when we do something or say we're going to do something, we do it. So like that's why everything is a very extensive contract when we're working with sponsors and such. So we have all our T's crossed, we have all our I's dotted, and we have to follow it to a T. So whether it's posting obligations or certain brand talking points, X amount of posts for a brand, X amount of videos. There's so many things that we have to check off a list, and we all have the lists. I mean, it's crazy extensive, the lists, but that really helps. So like they're tangible assets that the companies can utilize for their own marketing tools that really help them. So not only do they get to slap their name on with the show, but they know that they're getting this big list of tangible assets that are from 4 different people throughout the whole entire season, not just all the photos, not just all the videos, all the short little clips that we film for them, but it's a huge list of product promotion and talking points that they can utilize as well.
Yeah. And I've used that same mentality because like the 2 podcasts we have, this one's kind of small. I started it, and obviously it's more niche down into like entrepreneurship. The other one is just a Western hunting podcast. And so that one is the breadwinner of the 3 efforts I have right now. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy how you said, because the first 2 spots, so I worked with Steelhead Outdoors. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're over in Shakopee, not too far away from you. They're a modular gun safe company.
Oh, nice.
So you can, I disassembled my gun safe, moved it into my basement, carried each panel by myself and assembled it. And it's still fire insulated, like 2-inch or 3-inch thick walls, 650 pounds assembled, but you can move it by yourself. And I've moved like 3 or 4 times now as an adult. The last time I moved, I had to get a rugby buddy to help me get my like huge gun safe out of my house with the stairs. And I was just sweating bullets. And so, but we had this agreement. We sent numbers. We did a lot of emails, talked to him on multiple shows, had him on a podcast. When it came time to do the deal, like he gave me an invoice. I gave him some, cash. We struck this little deal, but they basically did a product swap. So I sold I said, hey, I'll sell my old gun safe because I want yours. And I'll give you that. You give me the balance as a deal. Cause that's kind of how the numbers played out anyway.
Yeah.
And they're just loaded up in the truck and away we went. And we've been obviously working together ever since, but there's no paperwork.
Yeah.
Did the same thing with Maverick, a blind company, like a panel blind.
Oh yeah.
And I worked with the rep from Maverick. She's super cool to work with. Go back and forth, talk numbers, talk plan, strategy. Show up. They put a bunch of blinds in the back of my truck. They show me around the shop. Had a cool time. Talked for 2-3 hours. Left. No paperwork. Yeah. Right. And so I'm like, this is strange.
Yeah.
Like, obviously I have all these episodes out. People know what I do, and I'm not like just like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, I have a podcast, give me stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Well, then I got GOHUNT on the phone and we started talking because they're a perfect partner for the Western, because it's all about Midwesterners trying to learn how to hunt the West. And that's GOHUNT's bread and butter right there.
Oh, yeah.
That contract was 18 pages. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
finally had to do, like you said, like, it's, you know, the bonus series is going to be this many episodes. The full series is going to be this many episodes. Title sponsor, we're going to have at least this many episodes with a GOHUNT person as a guest, you know,
Yep.
blah, blah, blah. Like you said, assets. And then I've always offered, like, I am no Bart with a camera, but I do well and I try hard and I'm always learning. And I've got a little portfolio put together and I always offered that as like free resources. Like I don't feel like I'm good enough to charge for my camera yet, but so I base everything off a podcast, which for you would be like, I base everything off the YouTube views, but I also will do these for you in like goodwill. Like I'll take all these pictures. I'll do these shoots. I shot a instruction video, took 2 full days of filming on how to set up a 6-panel blind.
Oh, yeah.
And edited all. Like, it was, my wife was about ready to be done.
Oh, yeah.
And it was the week before gun season by the time we got the deal closed.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're rushing to get this thing out in time. So, but yeah, no, like the digital assets, I think if you're good enough to charge with the camera, that really helps. If you're not, it's still things that can help influence like a decision or a deal to come through. Like you need something where they can, like, I've always thought of it like, because I am in corporate America, I'm an engineer for a big company, so I know how decisions are made in a way in certain places. But like they need something on paper that says this is why we did it, right? They had this many views, this was the rate per view we're gonna pay, here's the final price. But then at the end of the day, there's also these other things that are hard to put value on, but they do bring value, and that can help make a deal.
Yeah, that's exactly what we do. We have it all written out in our proposals for each year, and the proposals are very extensive, and that's what initiates the negotiations essentially.
Yeah, I should do more proposals. I usually end up finding out about a company or already knowing a company I want to work with, and then eventually getting like, I'm very patient. I waited over a year for the GOHUNT deal because I was waiting until I had the right person on a podcast, built a relationship with them, then asked for a connection to be made, and waited to have the right moment versus like knocking on the door with a big whiteboard and a slide deck. But it probably wouldn't hurt to do it that way either.
The proposals are really good, and that's one thing Bart is incredibly talented at, are the proposals. He does just an exceptionally good job with the proposals. And so if you ever need help on proposals, he is the guy. I mean, there's pretty much every single company that we have worked with has told me how good the proposals were that Bart has done. So he is very, very good at that. That's kind of like an unknown talent that he has, is he is very good at proposals, but the proposal is only as good as the product following behind it.
Right.
So that's where we really have to make sure we nail everything perfectly. And catching fish on top of that doesn't make things easy at all. So it really is, it's a challenge, but it has turned into a big business, and it's to a point now where like it's on our minds constantly, no matter what time of the year it is, of how we can make the show better and how we can, provide a better relation to our sponsors. So it is very difficult, but that's why we do spend a lot of time in the off season, just figuring out all the logistics.
Yeah. One of the last things I wanted to ask you, because I could see this being like a hot button topic, or I could see it being like a breeze, but like anytime you're working as a team and there's money involved, there's spouses and kids involved, there's trips involved.
Oh yeah.
Like, how do you guys kind of set boundaries, set up the, like, if the company does X, like, here's how it's going to be divvied out. Like, you mentioned earlier, it's Bart's company. So like, how does it work? Like, because you all contribute, like you said, we each have our role. We all contribute, like we all help build the success of this thing. So how does everything kind of get allocated? And like, how do, like, you've overcome, like, when the fish aren't Bart and the tensions are high? working
Yeah.
as a team, like what does it take for anyone out there that wants to build like a 4-man channel and go do the next whitetail thing or the next
Yeah.
elk thing? Because there's a lot of, so in the elk hunting, there are a few groups out there doing kind of similar
Oh
things.
yeah,
Like
you got Born and Raised, you've got all
Born
those.
and Raised, Hush,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and so like, how does that give a little insight, maybe just to wrap up the episode, of what it's like being a member of a team? Like things happen, like it's a passion
yeah.
industry, like passions
yeah.
fly high, like good and bad.
Yeah, we have a checks and balances set up where we always keep each other in check, and if someone's, you know, either their ego's getting too big or someone's just being an asshole, we always keep each other in check. And we're always very open, and everything is the biggest thing I would say that is what's been a benefit to us is we're all really good friends, and we have a level of trust with each other where we're very open when we talk to each other about anything. So
Okay.
we keep that very fluid, but like how the money breaks down, it pretty much is like, one, Bart does get paid the most, but that's because he also is sitting behind a computer for 20 to 30 hours to edit a video. So he hardly sleeps at all the
Right.
couple days before a video gets posted. Or there's like me and Griff where we have so many days a week that we have to go scout and pre-fish and figure out some of these lakes and figure out, are the fish that we want to chase in a specific lake, are they setting up for us enough to film?
Right.
So there's a lot of little ways that the money does break down. The biggest thing I would probably say though is that we just all have a very good relationship where we keep each other in check, and we're very open when we talk to each other. So before the season starts, we always get together, probably usually at Giesenbroy Brewery, and we all sit down and we go over all the numbers from sponsorship dollars to dates and trips, to just availability of our schedules and how we can figure out how to film the show the next year. So
Right.
I would probably say the biggest things would be planning, open communication, and keeping each other's egos in check. Making sure that you're all on the same page is the best thing that you can possibly do.
And it sounds like the theme I'm catching, basically, it sounds like the overall theme I'm really hearing is like, we pre-plan. We plan, we don't react. Like,
yeah. Well,
we know what we're doing, and
times we do react though.
Well, you have
but
to,
that's
especially
the reaction is more so on the fishing aspect of it.
Right, but we know like this year we're targeting the Metro, and everyone's like, yeah, on board with that. And so like, you know, one of you's not like, hey, I want to go back to Maine, and you're like, well, I want to go to Devils, and well, I thought we were staying in the Metro this year. You know what I mean? Like, we know what the plan is.
That. Yeah.
But we know what the plan is. We know going into the season what we kind of have the numbers for the season, and not like, you know, the flip side could be like me and a buddy start a YouTube channel, it blows up, we get like a check from, you know, $2,000 from YouTube. And I'm like, great, let's reinvest this in the company. And he's like, I wanted to buy a snowmobile.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, okay, now what? You know?
Yeah. No, we do keep it very, like for instance, this year, we knew like this year was going to be a really big year for us. We're entering into year 4, and we do need to go back to the Metro because we spent last year traveling. And we also looked at it as, well, this year, since it is going to be a big deal, and we're going to really have to pump the ice stuff because ice conditions have been so crappy that sales have been down for everyone.
Oh, yeah.
So we were looking at it as like, we need to up our camera gear. So we allocated like $5-6 grand into purchasing new cameras and lenses. Like, so for us, it is very business oriented, where our first care is not, we can't be selfish about anything. So we care about the brand first. So if that means we get less money each, but it benefits the brand and the growth of the brand, we all are on the same page of, yes, we do that. And we have a vote system pretty much, and so it always has to be unanimous. And if it's not unanimous, you figure out a way to make it unanimous with either a give and take situation. As for like the traveling and the trips, it's gotten to a point now where it's just places that we want to go, that we've always wanted to go, and we just figure out how to logistically make it work and fit in with the storyline and just do cool things that we've always wanted to do. Because now we're at the point where we're established enough and we have the sponsor dollars enough now where we can go to really cool places and do things that we've always wanted to go to, and fish destination places that are wildly like that I never thought I was gonna fish. Like I didn't think I was gonna go crappie fish in Maine, and so like we always get together that previous year and just be like, what do we want to do? And we just figure out a way to make it work. And I think a big thing is just, if you are going to do a group thing, you just got to get 4 guys that have a like mind, that want to do the same things that you want to do. And like for me, I just want to go chase big fish with my buddies. And I think realistically, that's simply what the Chronicles is 4 guys that are all buddies that just want to chase big fish, and big crappies to be specific. And for us, it doesn't matter where we go, as long as we're doing it, we're having fun and making the show work.
Yeah, it does sound like a lot of fun. I'm always a little bit jealous of like, I wish I was on that team. Like I wish I was the camera guy that's never had, spice in my life, and I get to test out. Be like, wow, that's actually really good. And then, or like, the one that got me the most, I think his name was Jonathan. But it was when you guys were in the Golden Triangle, your cameraman.
Luke. That was Luke.
Okay,
yeah.
Luke.
Yeah.
And he's tasting this. He's like, that's really spicy. And in the background, you can see Griff just pounding that same sauce he's talking about. And then he looks up, he's like, I don't know. It's just like looks like that is way too hot for me. And then there's just Griff just pouring out the whole bottle. So
and the best part about it is you'll look at Griff like 10 minutes after he's eaten it, and he is profusely sweating, and he looks absolutely miserable, but he loves it.
Yeah, so, that was in the Otter. No, was it Lacaparla episode? Or you guys went to that bar and you had a bunch of different food, and you were like, Griff was sweating, and then you FaceTime Pink to show him like what happened.
Yeah, that we were up in Ottertail for that. That was at the
that was Ottertail.
Yep, that was at the Rusty Nail. That was a fun one.
Just sweating to death. No, I came up with a pitch 30 seconds ago, so I did not plan as much as Bart. But I asked the question. I was asking myself, like, you guys are definitely dedicated to crappies. You have a couple other things you catch every now and then, but I was like, well, we could start a sister series.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not as high as production, so don't expect a lot out of me. But instead of chasing giant sunfish, it'll be me and my brother-in-law, and we'll have to find 2 more buddies, or maybe my father-in-law, and we'll just go chase giant sunfish.
Yeah, the bluegill barnacles.
Yeah, that would be great. If you must have talked about it.
Well, there's a couple of our buddies that always joke with us, because a lot of we have a pretty big mutual friend group of people that all of us are really close with, and our friend group is pretty tight, and especially for me and Bart, because we didn't grow up together, but we kind of grew up together, because we've like known each other since high school. And so like the last 15 years, we've all hung out in the same friends group. And so a lot of our buddies always give us shit because they never see us all winter. And so they call us the bluegill barnacles. So it's kind of a running joke.
That would be the perfect name for it, though. Yeah, the bluegill barnacles, because it would also play on the fact that like it would be, I don't know. I like to do like the self-deprecating humor to cover the fact that I'm really not that great at anything. It's like I'm good at finding elk, not super great at killing them with a bow, but I'll find them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, the barnacle thing would be like, we're just a bunch of goofs out here having fun and catching giant sunfish, which isn't easy.
Yeah.
But
no, it's so actually for ice fishing, my favorite thing in the world is chasing giant bluegills. And so before the Chronicles, like I would chase giant crappies, like fishing around the metro and stuff, because we have huge ones. But before the Chronicles, like every chance I got, I was driving to either South Dakota, western Minnesota, southern Minnesota, the northern Minnesota, even to Iowa, chasing giant bluegills. Like, that was my favorite thing in the entire world to do that before the Chronicles started. So we all kind of have our true little passions too. Like, Bart's is bass fishing. Like, and mine was too for the longest time until I really figured out hunting and how much fun that is, and shooting the bow and shooting. Now I'm buying a bunch of guns, and I absolutely love hunting now. So the bluegill thing I love doing, but for the future we might be mixing in some new species. So I don't know if we'll do it this year, but hopefully next year in the year. Like, this year, all of our plans got completely turned around because, like, we were going to do the Metro in December, and then the first half of January, and then we were going to go out west the last half of January into February, and then we were going to be done. Well, we had to cancel that, completely flip-flop it, and do northern Minnesota or northwestern Minnesota the first trip, and then spend the whole rest of the winter in the Metro. So we completely had to change things around quite a bit, and it sucks because you do get sick of chasing crappies. Just, it's so repetitive over and over and over again that for us, like, I know the viewers love it because crappies are like the number one thing chased on the ice, but for us, when it's your strict focus the last like 3 years, you do get to a point where, like, okay, I want to go mess with some pike, or I want to go mess with some big fish and really get my ass whooped fighting a fish. So it really depends on, you know, what it is, but it's gotten to a point now where we do want to mix in some other stuff.
Yeah, I think crappies are that fish that it's like there's a lot of them. They're relatively easier to catch for the average person to go. Like, walleye, like, I think everyone would be like, yeah, if we're slamming big walleyes all day long, I'm definitely going to go do that. But that's just not the nature of the species.
Yeah.
You know, sunfish, usually it's hard to find, especially in the Metro, it's hard to find keeper class sunfish at all.
Yeah.
Perch, there's starting to be a good following for, but they're very location specific. You know,
significantly.
Like,
yeah.
You know, to get jumbos, otherwise they're just annoying. And so it's like crappies is kind of that like last man standing species of like, what do you want to fish today? Well, I'd like to catch some fish and I'd like to keep some fish. So that rules out perch and sunnies, walleyes and northerns. We're left with crappies.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, like, what we do, I think, is special because we do the eater aspect of everything, but we also really focus on the chasing the giant, that 0.001% of fish that we do have around here. And the craziest thing is the amount of them that we've seen or lost or broken off, like, is sickening and would make a normal person cry. But getting it on camera is the most impossible thing in the world. So that's the one thing that kind of keeps the fire going, is we're on year 4 now and we still haven't gotten an 18, and it is pissing us off.
So I was going to ask, I remember in the first episode, I think Bart said, like, the goal is to catch the biggest crappie ever recorded through the ice.
Yeah.
And so is that 18? Is that what the number is for you guys?
Yeah, I think the biggest one recorded through the ice was Jason Mitchell's from the Sand Hills in Nebraska. It would have been like 4 or 5 years ago. He got one that was like right at 17. And then we actually screwed up season 1. I caught one that was probably, we didn't get a good measurement on it because we forgot the bump board. And so we can't call it what it truly was, which it was a freak. And on the rod, we measured it in between like 16 and a half and 17 and a quarter, but we didn't get an exact official measurement on it. So we can't count that fish.
Was that the river episode where you're fishing like 2 feet of water in a really small river?
Yeah, that was the river episode. So that was very unfortunate, but Griff's backwater one from 2 years ago was our biggest so far. And
that was a 16, right? 16.
Yeah, that was 16 and a half. And the funny thing about that thing is it had a stub tail. So it really, if it didn't have a stub tail and the tail was oddly small on it, it probably would have hit the 17-inch mark, which would have been close to being the biggest one on ice recorded. But it was, it was an absolute freak. I think it was just over 3.5 pounds. It was huge.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, so
What's the state record? Minnesota state record?
21 inches. I think it's like 5 pounds 2 ounces or something like that. And that was out of Red Wing, the Vermilion River backwaters.
Oh, geez. Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
That
But
would be
the thing
crazy.
is, it sounds like the Minnesota DNR is abolishing all the state records pre-1980 because the legitimacy of them is very high in question, because
Okay.
they've changed the state record application process so many times that now it's like you actually have to bring the fish
Yeah.
to an official weigh station and that stuff. So like it's gotten significantly more legitimate than what it used to be.
Yeah.
So like it used to be you just had a scale and you would, if you had 2 witnesses, that was now the state record. So there's a lot of things you could do to make a fish weigh a lot heavier. So
Yeah, I think the walleye tournaments have found that out recently.
yeah, exactly. So there was a lot of talk about it, and I know it was voted in, and I can't remember if it's getting if all the old state records are getting abolished, but it sounds like for this next year it will be. So I really hope we get one this year, but I really hope it's after that state record gets abolished, because we want to have that new state record, which would be pretty awesome.
That would
But
be. I mean, it's sad for the fish because obviously, if you have a picture, like it's hard to fake a 21. Like whether it was 19 or 20 or 22, like it was a big fish. But yeah, it would be fun to like to have this journey kind of conclude with the record fish and be like, we did it. And then I feel like everyone's gonna be like, all right, next.
Yeah,
Like, I'm done with crappies.
I've seen like the biggest one that I've actually seen in person was on my buddy's wall, and it's 20 on the nuts. It's a huge fish. Like you can even go and measure it. It's freaking massive. And it was like just over 4 pounds. 5 pounds on a crappie, I think that's not accurate.
Yeah.
Especially for Minnesota holding one of the largest crappies in the country for a state record. I don't think that's exactly accurate, but I think 4 pounds isn't out of the question, because Griff's caught the most big crappies out of all of us, and his is the closest to it, and his is 3 pounds 14 ounces. It was stinking massive, 18 and a quarter. Absolutely,
that's Griff's
huge.
record.
That's Griff's big one. Yeah, he's got 22 fish over 18, I believe.
Oh,
he's got.
God.
Yeah, there was one lake that he was fishing way back when that absolutely went off, that he caught a majority of them on, but he's got like 3 other lakes that he's gotten them on, or 2 other lakes that he's gotten them on as well.
So is that the biggest difference maker? So like I've been fishing crappies my entire life. I have a 14 3/4 on the wall from that lake I grew up on. Mm-hmm. And we have like regional, like, you know, for us, a great day of crappie fishing, we're catching those 12s and 13s. 14s are rare. Is the real difference maker, like when you're like, I want to catch a giant, is like they're not in every lake. You need to go find lakes that have giants.
That's a huge one. Yeah.
Like if you're like, I want to shoot an elk, okay, well, it's not going to happen in Minnesota. Like there's a couple elk in Minnesota, but if you want to kill an elk, go to Colorado or Montana. Yeah. Like that's the difference maker. That's most people aren't like picking up on.
Yeah, like that's number one, is you just have to be where giants are. Number 2 would be figuring out how to make the giants eat and simply locating them. Because like there's lakes that we fish that you would swear they're ghosts. Like you go on one day and you don't even see a fish that you think is remotely close to that size, and then you go the next day and you're like, there's one there, there's one there, there's one there. And getting a bait in front of them and actually getting them to bite is next to impossible most of the time. So it's challenging, but you do have to be in a lake that produces them. That's always number 1.
When you're saying seeing fish, like you're saying like on forward-facing sonar, you're seeing a fish and you're like, yeah, if that's a crappie, it's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've gotten to a point now where you can usually tell what species there are just by the way they're behaving and how they're relating to other fish species. So a lot of times the really, really big crappies are very adjacent to smaller ones. They're usually like the guardian of the group almost, or they're eating the little ones. And so you can usually see them. And a lot of times people will be like, oh, that's a big pike patrolling the school. Well, big pike on forward facing look like a rectangle. Big crappies on forward facing look like a fist or a ball.
Yeah.
So you can usually get a pretty good idea of what the fish actually are. And then once you start catching some, you start getting allocation to size up in your head. So
you're not actually looking at the forward facing or the sonar and being like, that fish goes from 2 feet out to 3.5 feet out, so that has to be an 18-inch crappie. You're just saying like that blob is twice as big as the last blob I caught, and that was a 9-inch crappie. So like,
we
this
measure
is going to
them.
be a big.
Yeah, we measure them on the forward facing.
And it's relatively accurate. I mean, obviously, you're like, that's not going to make it into the record book, but you can be like, that thing is huge. Like, it's definitely over a foot. Like, I want to catch it and find out.
Yeah. Yep. So we've got it down now where we can tell if it's like a 10 to 12-inch crappie. We can tell if it's like a 13 to 15-inch crappie, and we can tell if it's over 15. But we've got like those ranges on the size of the targets because we've become so familiar with our units. Like from our Vexillar units to our Humminbird Mega Live units, we've become very familiar on what fish look like size relation wise.
How do you do it on a Vexillar? Are you just looking at how thick the red band is?
Yep, how thick the red band is and how it's behaving adjacent to your lure. A lot of those big ones are very smart and very cautious when they come in. When the bite window's going, they'll annihilate a lure. But when it's not going, you do get a very good idea of how big fish actually are. But it's about how thick they are on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah,
I probably usually have mine turned up too high.
That's because you need a new transducer. That'll fix that issue.
It probably wouldn't hurt to just get a whole new Vex, but man, farm implements for my tractor are also very expensive.
Yeah, and that sounds like it's more important too. If I had to choose spending money on ice fishing or spending money on hunting, I'd be going the hunting route for sure. Every day, all day, every day.
Yeah, no, what I have works, so that's kind of where I hate buying, like putting more money into things that I already have that work just to make it work a little better.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure you know this more than most, but like finding a free FL8 on the side of the road versus the new FLs 26s and 30s is like, there's a really substantial price difference there.
Yeah, there is. I'll take the free route all day, any day.
So yeah, no, that's where I'm at. But no, it's been super great to have you on the podcast, Matt, and hearing everything that kind of goes into how you, not only how you chase these giants, but how you built the brand around it, and just like the whole story is super interesting. I know I said like one more question a bunch of questions ago, but
no, that's fine.
I want to give you, good conversation, but I do want to kind of respect your time and let you get on with the rest of your night.
Don't worry about it at all. I love this stuff. So
yeah. Well, you guys, you also have, are you part of the Pass the Barb crew, or is that a different team of 4?
So that's Adam Bartuzik, that's Ryan Pinkala, and then Will Stolsky and Cody Honor. And then I jump in every once in a while.
Right.
Yeah, and same with Sobe. Sobe's now a part of that too. So we all jump in every once in a while, but that's just a group of our buddies. Again, that's a little bit more extended group of the buddies that they started doing that podcast with.
Nice. Awesome.
So yeah, I jump in every once in a while, but they are starting to they're at the point now, from my understanding from talking with Bart, on deciding if they want to make it a business or not. So they're at the point of what the Chronicles were at after year 1.
Okay.
Where this is fun, we're going to do this. It's helping Bart launch his media career, and Griff and I did it completely for free. And we were like, yeah, let's try this and see how it goes. And they're at that point now with Pass the Barb on, are we just going to keep doing this for fun, or are we going to make this more serious? So they're starting to get to that point, I think.
Well, that's super exciting. Before we break, I do want to give you a chance to share any news you have for the Chronicles coming up.
Yes, I got the dates. Bart texted me the dates for that.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are doing it's a St. Jude fundraiser at Giesenbroy Brewery in New Prague, and it is on February 24th from 4 to 9 p.m. And we will have probably like $10,000 to $15,000 in giveaways, or not giveaways, but raffle items.
Yeah.
And I think one of the raffle items is actually, it's a Chronicles trip day. So you get to come out with us, and this is probably the biggest one out of all the raffle items, but you get to go out with us. You get to fish with all of us just as we were like on a film day. And so you'll be guided by me and Griff, and Bart will be there taking photos and videos, and it'll be a lot of fun. And Pinkala's going to cook on the ice for us. And so that is one of the raffle items that you could win. And so
Nice.
we're doing it at the brewery that day, and it should be a lot of fun. We did it last year and it went really, really well. So I think that's the next big event that we have going on this year. And I think
And you said that's 4 to 9 on the 24th of February?
Yeah. Yep. I believe that is going to be
Last Saturday in February.
Saturday.
I might have looked disengaged when you were doing the details.
No.
Because I was writing them down so I don't forget, so I can be there.
Yeah. That was the 24th, 4 to 9 p.m. of February, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And all of us will be there, and so Giesenbroy makes our Chronicles beer, which is
the PB.
Which is Break Your PB. Yeah,
Break Your PB.
And it's a peanut butter blonde, and it's actually really good. I'm not a huge brewery beer guy. It's pretty much the only brewery beer that I actually love. Besides that, I am a Busch Light guy through and through. If I'm going to have a beer, that's what I drink. And so this is actually one of the first beers that's like a brewery beer that I've been like, okay, this is actually really good. Like, I'll drink this. So we'll have that there. They'll have kegs of it available, or pounders also available of it. And it'll be a really fun day. We did it last year, and it was awesome. It was so much fun. And so this year it should be even better because we have much, much better raffle items than we did last year. We had good ones last year, but we have really good ones this year. And
awesome.
So that top prize will be the fish with the Chronicles day and Pink cooking on the ice for everyone.
I was going to say the top prize is a guaranteed coupon for an 18-inch crappie.
I wish. If we catch one that day, I think Bart will lose his shit.
You would, I mean, obviously you want to see the fish and it helps the channel and everything you're doing, but you'd have to feel a little salty that this random person shows up and smokes an 18. After 4 years of you guys trying.
Yeah. Me personally, I would be super pumped just because I've done a ton of guiding, and so has Griff. And so that's the whole premise of the show, is teaching people how to catch big crappies. And like, our favorite thing in the world is when we get a message from a kid that catches a giant doing something that he saw us do in a video, or using a bait he saw us catching them on, or that stuff. So like, that's where I get all my satisfaction from the show. It would suck a little bit not having one of us catch it, just because we have worked so hard for it, but it would definitely make my day seeing someone catch it. And we're getting to a point now where we just want to see one.
Yeah, no, I think you guys will do it. My brother-in-law, he smoked that big fish that Bart showed you.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. He loves Chronicles. I think he's probably the number one consumer of Tika flashes now. I've got a few of them. I've got a few too. Some Pinhead Pros, a lot of drop kicks, all from watching the show. I mean, really, it is like, it's like a lot of what I'm learning about, not just like hitting the spots I know because I fished my entire life and they're always good for a dinner of crappies, but like, actually looking for big fish and like taking the time. Like, when I moved up here, I texted Bart, and I didn't want to be the guy that's like, hey, where are the big crappies? But I'm just like, hey, here's where I live. There's a lot of lakes by me. I've been doing a little research. It seems like they're good, but like, can I really trust the DNR websites and stuff? Like, is it worth checking these lakes out? And then he's basically just like, yeah, those are some really good lakes up there by you. Like, it's definitely worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and that's the cool thing is there's a lot of that right around the metro. Like
Yeah.
that's why we film here, is we've seen the fish. We see pictures of them every year of them getting caught, and that's probably the one reason that actually I do love chasing giant crappies and chasing giant bluegills. Is it is very similar to the hunting aspect of things, where we're hunting for that one fish. And so for me, on the hunting side of things, I'm nowhere near that point yet. I'm just happy if I shoot a buck in a year. So I'm nowhere near that point yet. I just absolutely love it. But it's taking that mentality, that hunting mentality, where you're going for a specific animal, like the spot and stock mentality. That's what we're applying to the crappie fishing. And so we'll completely look away from 90% of the schools that we see just to go after one specific fish. And we've spent hours on one specific fish trying to make it eat over and over and over and over again until we finally catch it. And so we're taking that hunting mentality and just shifting it over to ice fishing.
Yeah. No, that's great. Maybe that's why I'm more into it than just your average go plop down a bobber, because I love the hunting and I love spot and stock. I love Western hunting. And we've already started joking about that with my brother-in-law's live scope of just like, let's go spot and stock that school.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly how it is. And it's so much fun doing it that way. And it is an absolute riot. And there's some bites that we're on that we can't do that. Weed bites, it's exceptionally hard to do that. Backwaters, it's almost impossible to use forward facing because you're only in 3 foot of water. So there's a lot of times where we can't do it and we wish we could. And it makes things, definitely makes things easier, but it almost makes things more frustrating, because especially when you see the fish and you can't get them to bite.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. I mean, that happened to us multiple times this weekend, where we'd have giants come up and completely deny us. So it was frustrating.
Yeah, no, I get it. I had a 165-inch buck sitting at 200 yards this year, and I was in shotgun zone with a 150-yard shotgun.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Like, you try to get them, you try to pull them in, you try to rattle, you try to grunt, you try to do this, you try to do that. 2 hours, had them on film whole time. I mean, it's a buck that we've been chasing for 2 or 3 years now. Looking back on pictures, we had history with it. We named him. I named him Maverick after the blind. I've spent 8 hours building a blind on a platform on our farm. And then that night he showed up on camera underneath that stand, like literally walked through the legs of the stand. And I mean, all night, all year long, cell cams. It's just frustrating. Like, it's frustrating when it doesn't work, when you put all much time into it and they just disappear on you. I get it, man. I've been there. This is kind of, that's a blurry video, but
that's a tank.
Yep.
That's the tank. I only got one big one on picture this year, and it was stinking monster. And got one nocturnal photo of him passing through a spot. Never saw him again. Never saw him on the hoof. I got one photo of this deer, and it's a monster. I'll have to send it over to you. It's stinking huge.
Are you hunting private land, or are you hunting public land in the cities, or?
Big mixture of both. My buddy Brooks Prohaska is really taking me under his wing down here and helped me out with the private land stuff.
Okay.
And kind of taught me the ropes of door knocking and stuff like that. So there is a mixture of it, but last year I shot my first buck on public land, and that was right around the New Prague area.
Oh, that'd be super cool.
And this year I shot a doe on public land as well. Actually, the same exact spot on public land too. So I like the public land stuff because I like being able to do whatever I want to do.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the most impatient people ever, which is why I like whitetail hunting, but that's why I go out west every year. Like last year we did South Dakota antelope. I missed at like 92 yards. So dang close. Almost, it would have been absolutely perfect. Didn't realize the second axis on my sight was all screwed up.
Oh, no.
And I went back. So I made like a mile long stock on a buck that ended up completely disappearing, like antelope do, because they run 100 miles an hour.
Right.
And while I was on that stock, I must have leaned on my bow too much when I was crawling.
Ooh.
And I screwed up the second axis, and I went and shot back at camp, and I was shooting like a foot high at 20 yards. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then finally we got it to be somewhat dialed in under 40, but I ended up having to bring it up to full draw, and they were like, yeah, your second axis is just screwed up. And so had to reset the sight and everything and retape it, and it was a pain. But this past year we did private land, Nebraska mule deer, and that was a ton of fun.
Oh yeah.
So I got a velvet muley, which I was super pumped about. Small little guy. Actually, he was super old, had a big Roman nose, screwed up rack, and he had no teeth left, so he wouldn't have made it another year. And yeah, I'm so addicted to hunting out west, it's unbelievable. So I think this next year, my buddy Justin and I and Brooks are going out to Montana, I believe. We haven't nailed down logistics yet, but we're going to try to do a group tag out there. I don't know if they even do that.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Where we can all get a tag if we draw.
5 is the limit in Montana. I happen to know a lot about Western apps because part of the GOHUNT partnership is we're doing a bonus series of every deadline in the West, like a week before the deadline with the whole breakdown.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to be hitting
April 1st is the deadline in Montana.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. So I'm going to be hitting you up then, because I'm just getting into the Western hunting and I'm absolutely obsessed with it. Like, I'm pretty sure I've watched every Born and Raised video 100 times now, and same with like all the Hunting Public videos from out west. Like, I am so addicted to it, that style of spot and stock hunting, because that's what we do for chasing panfish around here.
Yeah.
So I am obsessed with it.
You should check out Randy Newberg. He's another good one for you.
Okay.
He's a public land advocate, very informational and educational as well, like, and entertaining. Like, he's a fun guy to listen to and watch, but like very salt of the earth, great human being, and like you'll pick up a lot of stuff watching his stuff.
Okay, I'll have to watch that. I did just get the GOHUNT Premium membership.
The GOHUNT Insider?
Yes, the Insider.
You should have used the code Western. You could have got $50 of free gear shop credit. That's my podcast code. Send them an email.
I wish I would
send them an email and be like, "Hey, I tried to type in the code, but it didn't work. Can we add it?"
Yeah, well, I'm a part of it now, so I am definitely going to be heavily reliant on that tool.
Oh, it's the best tool. For sure. It's the best tool ever.
Yeah.
You did like an unintentional product promo for me.
Yeah. That's even better.
Yeah.
Because I when I really got into it and I knew like I want to start hunting out west and everything, I downloaded all the apps. I downloaded Onyx. I downloaded GOHUNT. There's a third one I think that I've also downloaded.
HuntStand's kind of big. Hunting Fool.
Yep. This one was DeerCast.
DeerCast is good for whitetails. There's an app, Spartan Forge.
Yep, that was the other one.
I had Bill Thompson on this podcast, actually. He's the founder of Spartan Forge. And then there's another app. Oh, boy, I shouldn't forget this because I had him on the podcast. But Brendan Labrum started a shed hunting app for the West.
Oh, that's cool.
Scout to Hunt. Yeah, it's specifically built for shed hunting.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
But yeah, no. Colorado, Montana, Wyoming. Those are your 3 core. That'll be the core of your states. Colorado, to build points, you have to do an app, so don't miss out on the application deadline. You can't. Montana, Wyoming, you can buy a point all summer long. So yeah, those would be the 3 states to focus in on to start with. Yeah,
and I think we're gonna do. Because the nice thing about Nebraska is it's all over the counter, right, but there's not as much public land.
If you want to just bypass that, you can get Land Trust. Nick DeCastro started that. We just had him on both podcasts, but he has Land Trust, which is like Airbnb for hunting land. You can book private land as little as like a day or 2 days.
Oh, so you could pick multiple places to go from like a week and a half long.
You could do multiple different places. You could do one place for as many days as you want. Like, it's just like it gets as short as a day. Sometimes it's like a 3-day package. There's a lot of them in Nebraska. We specifically talked about that, like the over-the-counter mule deer options in Nebraska. with Land Trust.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to look into that because, yeah, Nebraska was awesome. The sandhills were super cool, but I think this next year we want to get into an area with a little bit more terrain.
Okay. For elk or
So I'm
for
not
deer?
for mule
Okay.
deer. I'm not ready for elk yet. I suck at blowing mouth calls, like the worst at it. I can't even turkey call. Like I'm brutal at it. I can run a box and a slate, but I am really bad at mouth calls. So I want to definitely work on that, and I want to get significantly more experience with spot and stock hunting before I go all in on an elk hunt.
What?
Because
yeah, I mean, I don't want to tell you what to do. I hate doing that. But you probably won't use as much of your spot and stock skill set as you'd think on an elk hunt, on an archery elk hunt.
Yeah,
because it's all.
You do more glassing.
No, I mean that to me that is spot and stock hunting glassing. It's black timber calling. You'll likely be doing it unless you hunt like the breaks or eastern Montana. But we archery hunt every year. In our group, we got a group of 7, and yeah, it's typically black timber, bugling, calling, doing setups, having them come into you. So I wouldn't say like, oh, I'm not ready yet because of the spot and stock thing. Like you can choose if you want to or not. But
the calling thing, I'm definitely not ready with.
Well, come up to the farm, help me whack a couple does, and then we can break out the elk calls in the shop, and we'll get you squared away. I've been calling elk for 10 years now. I'm not like a Corey Jacobson. I don't want anyone to think I'm the world's expert, but no, I went through the same struggles. I mean, I couldn't blow them to save my life, and I had to figure it out. And now, I can turkey call with an elk call.
Oh,
that's how we signal each other to like be done. Or like when I'm whitetail hunting, I'll still have an elk diaphragm in, and if there's like does out in the plot, I'll just and scare them off.
Oh, nice. That's a really good idea.
Yeah. Well, these are things like I take for granted growing up whitetail hunting, that people that don't whitetail hunt are like, why are you doing a turkey call? And it's like, because I don't want the deer to see me climb out of my tree.
Yeah.
So
that's smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's what I love about the hunting thing is I'm so new to it that I have so much to learn, and I love being a sponge. So learning as much as I possibly can is awesome. Like that's why like when Pink came out with me to go out to the sandhills for mule deer. So the whole time I didn't ask too many questions, I don't think, but the whole time I was watching every single thing that he was doing and why he was doing it. So like after I had tagged out, the next day, the whole day I spent glassing and spotting for the boys, and it was really cool because I was able to watch them go in on stocks. And Justin's also a pretty experienced hunter, one of my best buds that came out with came out with us. And so I was able to watch those two through the spotter and really figure out what lanes they were going, why they were doing this, why they were doing that. And that was one of the most enjoyable things for me to do, was just sitting there watching those two. And you could see the wheels turning because they would stop and talk, and then they would cut a certain direction or take a certain low path or a high spot, and what wouldn't look as good to us would look good to them. And it was just really cool watching them break things down like that.
Well, yeah, and since you guys are all in like the metro, we should just get together and do a Western Rookie podcast episode, like right when you guys get back, or like right before you go, and like the excitement's super high. Maybe before you go, in case the trip doesn't go very well, because we've had that where we got big plans to do podcasts on the way out and the way back from elk camp. And on the way out, we're super excited, and then we get our teeth kicked in for 9 days. And on the way back, we're like, we're not doing a podcast, man.
Yeah. Well, I do like we do it all the time on our fishing trips. Is we all get together afterwards and we figure out what we could have done better, what went wrong, why it went wrong, and learning from that, because that's the only way you make yourself better. And I mean, we had all high hopes that go into this property in Nebraska that we were going to shoot 140s. And then we come back, I've got a spike buck, Pink and Justin have 2 does. So then it didn't go the way we thought, but at the same time we had so much fun doing it, and it's something that we were really able to learn from, of these deer were taking certain routes because that was the food source, this was the bedding, and this was the water. And they were running that lane. And we spent a lot of time looking everywhere else when we really should have just been hyper focused on that one lane.
Yeah.
So I love the learning aspect of everything in the outdoors.
Oh, there's the nice thing is you can spend your whole lifetime doing it and you'll never
Get it completely.
Never get it. But
unless you're Corey Jacobson and just kill elk on whim.
Well,
I know he doesn't, but it almost seems like that with how good those guys.
Well, you got to
are.
remember he's been doing it his whole life. I mean, that would be like, hey Griff, why don't you go out and catch a 12-inch crappie this season? Or like, you have 30 days to catch a 15-inch crappie, and he's like, okay.
Yeah, and he'd go and do it in a day.
Or he might not, but he'll do it. You
Yeah.
know, and I think that's part of it too, is like those guys are the same in that regard as you guys are with the crappies. You should do a little swapperoo.
Yeah.
You guys come out here, we'll take you on a week of crappie fishing, then we'll come out there and you help us kill 5 bulls.
Yeah, I don't think they would. That's an uneven thing.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I could hope. I mean,
Offer,
but I know if I was in their position, I'd just no.
It's like, I don't own a fishing rod, sorry, bud.
Yeah, that's not in his vocab.
Awesome. No, but dude, I really appreciate you having the time for this.
Yeah.
We went 2 hours lickety split. I think that's what happens when you talk about things you love. And so
all the time.
Super excited.
Yeah.
Super excited. Before we break, where do you want to send people? Where can they find the Chronicles? Where can they find your channels? We'll put links to all those places in the show. But for the folks listening that want to follow along for the rest of the season and your guys' journeys, let them know where to go.
Yeah. So Bart's YouTube channel, you just look up Bart or the Crappie Chronicles on YouTube and you'll find us. And then all of our socials, mine is just M Waldron Outdoors, and that's my Instagram. I can't even remember what my TikTok one is, but I hardly use it. So I'm really on that one. But that's the main places you can find us. And we're always, all winter long, we're posting either Expose the Ice videos, which is our information series on breakdowns, or we're posting a Chronicles episode.
Awesome. Well, I know I'll be looking forward to all the new episodes. I think a lot of our followers will be, but we'll put links to the socials and the YouTube channels in the show notes for anyone that wants to head over. And hopefully by the time this airs, which it's going to air tomorrow, so hopefully there's an 18-inch crappie on the channel.
Yeah, I hope so. It's not looking likely right now, but I hope so. Well, thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
brother.
thanks once again for being here, Matt, and thank you for listening, folks. Boom. Just that simple.
Boom.